one thing that I have actually come to appreciate in the aftermath is that having a very, very, very clear mission statement. Ours was training. We want to train people with skills. Numbers are like if somebody is unhoused or doesn't have employment in the first 3 years of coming out of prison, the recidivism rate is like 78%. It's a lot. And so I wanted to make sure I was helping that problem by both teaching a marketable skill and giving someone some housing.
Welcome back to the Bringing Up Business podcast, where we talk about business and parenting. If you are new to the show, we are happy to have you here. Whether you have an idea for a business, you already have a business and you're planning a family, or you want to upgrade your existing business and family situation, our goal is to empower you with strategies and confidence. I am your host, Kayla Sachet. I own a marketing and creative agency called Umari Digital. Umari Digital supports business owners with websites and marketing so that entrepreneurs can focus on what they do best. I am also a mom. I have a 2-year-old who I love spending time with outside in our garden. Today, we get to sit down with Kat Greenleaf. Kat created and hosted NBC's 9-year series, Talk Stoop, the celebrity interview show filmed on her Brooklyn front steps. She racked up 4 Emmys. Then she got fired. Looking for light, she moved her family to the beach in Coney Island. It was there that she founded a nonprofit called RHO, Restorative Housing Organization. RHO trains formerly incarcerated people to renovate waterfront properties, which are then rented to Section 8 tenants. She also started a radio show called Soberness, where she talks openly on the radio about sobriety. Kat, welcome to the show. I'm glad to get to chat with you again today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So let's dive into your journey. Which came first for you, business or parenting?
Business.
Business. Yeah, tell me more.
So I never wanted to be a mom until I was 37 years old. And my son was born 3 weeks after my 37th birthday, which my sons are adopted. So there's not so much exact planning you can do because you're at the whim of everything else. So many factors, not just your own time clock. So it
Yeah.
did happen beautifully according to the schedule I had laid out for myself. But by 37, I was already knee deep into my career. And the funny thing is, so many people said, "Oh, but your career is going so great. Why would you want to mess it up by having kids now?" Which, of course, I didn't listen to. And as it turned out, I went from being just a regular features reporter on WNBC in New York to, because my son was at home, coming up with this idea for Talk Stoop. And then my career really took off and flourished. So it was definitely business first, but once my family was on the scene, it became very intertwined.
Isn't it interesting how people were worried about what would happen to your career if you had kids? But then you have your kids and everything's fine. If not, things get better, things flourish.
It's almost like, well, it depends on what your priorities are. Of course, my priorities were having a family. And because I was born at a time and in a place that it wasn't exclusive, I didn't have to choose one or the other. Sort of arrogantly, it's the arrogance of my position in this world, right? I was born after 1970. I was born to believe that women can do whatever men can do, and a family and a career that just can go hand in hand, no question. So I did proceed with that arrogance and that confidence that I could do all of these things. And lo, that is what happened. Maybe people who thought, why would you mess it all up now, had a different set of circumstances than I had.
Yeah, that's fair. It's always fair to consider someone's perspective, right? Where are they coming from? What are their life circumstances and all of the experiences that they've had that have led up to this point and this opinion of how
Yes.
having a family can affect your life. Yeah. And so it's so cool how you were able to honor what you wanted, right? You didn't listen to what other people were telling you about your own life. Instead, you leaned into what felt correct for you. And that's a brave thing to do.
It's funny you say that. I've been thinking recently about whether or not I am too single minded or not single minded enough. Meaning, as a younger person, I never sought counsel. I went right through it. Of course, I can start my own show on a national network. Of course, I can adopt babies just the way I said I wanted to. Of course, all of these things are going to happen. And of course, they did because I was completely without distraction and never faltered for a moment because I had such a core belief that what I wanted to take place would. And I worked my butt off until it so manifested. Later in life, because life teaches you so many lessons in so many ways. Later in
Mm.
life, I've come to ask a lot of counsel of people and see what other folks are doing and try to, compare what I'm doing to what they're doing and should I be doing something else. Anywho, I'm not sure that's made me any better as a broadcaster or a business owner or a mom. Of course, sometimes it has, but the result has been that I'm now less confident in myself. I'm less confident uh, because of all the things I've weathered as a person who's lived on the planet 53 years. But I don't think being less confident is more comfortable, So being less confident has been the result of opening my mind to what other people are doing and other people's thoughts and ideas. In truth, I'm not sure if staying single minded wouldn't have been better, but that's not what happened.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think shifted from you having what you call a single mind to now being open to other people's opinions and ideas?
Good question. Honestly, it's very recent, actually. So this summer, I have racked up like three instances where, had I asked around a little more or double checked my gut against others, I think I would have avoided some pitfalls. So, with that in mind, I was away a couple weeks ago. And sometimes when you go far away, when you travel, your perspective on everything gets to expand, shift just by virtue of being out of your regular routine. And I
Yeah.
was away with my family and somehow saw myself for the single minded person I can be. And I thought to myself, this is such a big world. What makes you think you know for sure that X, Y, or Z is the actual real thing? And then I started looking at my life, decade before decade, thinking, wow, I've really done that quite a bit. And I think a result could be that I have shut myself off from things. So that was the shift to understanding that maybe my way isn't the only way. But if you're asking what made me shift from being uber confident in everything I did to opening up a little bit, I think it's the result of having spent this summer and looking at three failures and being like, wow, you really blew that thing. Maybe maybe you should open up.
Failure and travel are the best ways to expand our perspective. Oh my gosh.
Yes,
We had an episode with Jelani Millard where we talk about the value of travel and how it really can open up our worlds, right? We don't realize how tiny we are thinking and how little we know about the world until we get out there and we experience
that's right.
different cultures and different ways of being. Like, not everybody functions in the exact same way that we do. And we don't know that until we go out and see other people. Even if it's just like getting to another city, getting to another country, there's an even bigger advantage in
Yeah,
that growth. Yeah, yeah,
for
no,
sure.
there's definitely a lot to be gained there. So there was a point where you worked for women in prison. Like, what was that about? What did that teach you?
I'll tell you. So I bring recovery meetings into women's prisons. I also bring recovery meetings to formerly incarcerated men and women. And when I say recovery, although I believe recovery is a spectrum and you could be recovering from anything, but in this case, it's specific to substances. I mean, that's the entry, is that it's specific to substances, and then the conversations that ensue are much broader. But why do I do that? I do that because I have been sober from alcohol for about 12 years, and as a sober person, and just as a person, I realize that life can go sideways at any minute. And given the erratic behavior that I conjured up when I was drinking, I could have been inside a women's maximum security prison as an incarcerated individual. And I am obviously very grateful that I am not that. And I feel it's a bit of a paying it forward to try to do what I can to help these. I don't know, but I don't want to say help because that sounds very lofty. I'm opening up a little bit of space for them on a weekly basis to reckon with their own substance abuse issues. And honestly, I just think substance abuse is the result of so many other factors in our lives. People were a lot of the women in there obviously are perpetrators, but they are also victims. And I just feel like everybody is redeemable and everybody, I mean, this is not a religious podcast. My deep spiritual belief is that everyone is a child of God. And so their lives are no less important than ours.
Ooh, that's so beautiful to be able to see the human for the human that they are. And that includes all of the experiences that, again, like led up to that point in their lives where they made a decision or a decision was made for them. Who knows what the
Yes.
circumstances were, but that led them
Right.
into a situation that is unfavorable. And God, it's so easy to sit on the high horse and be like, "Oh wow, that was dumb. Why'd they do that?" But instead, let's focus more into wow, like what is this person's backstory? What did they go through? It's not like you wake up one day and you decide to do something that lands you in
Correct.
prison, right?
I would
There's a
say
lead up.
most of the people with whom I work did not wake up that day and decide to change their lives and that of their families for generations to come. The ones that did, that's a different um, that's a different story, only in that I'm less familiar with that because I've not spent years plotting and planning a crime. But could be me. If I had an abuser at home, if I was incredibly challenged financially, if I was ill mentally. I mean, there are a lot of things that lead us to the worst day of our lives.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful to acknowledge that, right? We are all essentially the same. We all
We are all the same.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's
You
true.
mentioned earlier that substance abuse or abuse in general can be on a spectrum. What are some other abuses that you've seen or experienced?
Well, power is one that gets
Oh.
easily abused. I think thoughtlessness is something that is actually an abuse of the people around you. So we were talking about earlier about this perspective shift that I had on myself. And one of them is, wow, I'm always pretty clear on what I think about how other people are acting. But lo, on the other end of this, people are really clear on how I'm acting. And maybe the way I've been presenting isn't at all the way I think I am being in this world. And then there's two ways to even look at that. One is, who cares what anyone else thinks? But the second is, it's a good reflection. Am I showing up on this planet the way I want to? And if I'm not, how would I know? I can see it reflected in others. So maybe I should stop thinking about my own thoughts so much and tune in a little bit to how other people are reacting to what I say and do. Now, again, that said, I go back to my earlier point about being single-minded. I've made so many decisions in this life that I see now are unpopular. Those include choosing to adopt children when I can have my own. I knew that since I was 6 years old that I was going to do that. That was unpopular. Giving housing and opportunities to felons, people aren't that into it. Uh, Things like that. Now, I don't care. what anybody thinks about how I feel about those things. So it's a double-sided coin. And again, this too is a spectrum. Like how much you're going to care what people think, how much you can use that as a mirror, and how much you're going to not care at all. I've had to mostly in my life not care at all because I'm now hearing in my 50s that my ideas aren't always standard. But oh well.
Of a blessing though, right? Like you get these unique ideas and you're able to give back to the world in a way that the world hasn't seen before or doesn't normally accept, but maybe it's needed.
Gosh, I sure hope what I'm doing is needed because every now and again, I enjoy a lot of it so much that I'm like, who is this for? But therein lies the rub. You have to love what you're doing that much that you're not sure if it's for you or for them. Because if you're just serving, but you hate it, is
Mhm.
that good? Are you spreading enough sunshine in the world? Just like other
Mhm.
people deserve to be served, you also deserve to be served. And so
Mhm.
I've been thinking recently about the things that I've done that have really hit versus the things that don't. And the ones that really hit are the things that I love the most, whether or not they're the most service based or classically obvious.
Yeah, yeah. And it makes sense too, because when you are so deeply into something, into doing something, that can help you ride through the ick because there's bound to be ick when you start something, right?
Yeah.
Or you start and continue to run something. It can get difficult, right? You run into challenges. And if you deeply care about something, you can get through that ick more easily.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about starting your nonprofit. What led to that decision? It sounds like it was an idea that you had, but where did that come from? What is it
Okay.
about?
I'll tell you the story.
Yeah.
So, listen, I'm so like white and Jewish and guilty, if I'm honest. My family moved out here to Coney Island in 2018. And New York City is rarely thought of as a water town. It's a lot, you think buildings, concrete, steel. So we had this opportunity to move a little farther out from downtown Brooklyn, where we were living, to Coney Island, which is still in the five boroughs. But the beach is pristine. It's you see forever over the ocean. I mean, it is crazy that we're here in New York City. So
That is crazy
I
because
love it.
I'm in Cali, and when I think of beach, I think of Cali beaches, or I think of somewhere in the Philippines or Thailand or something, gorgeous beaches. I don't think of New York.
Right. Right. So I feel so blown down that we get to live like this. And by the way, because it's a little farther out, New Yorkers were all about convenience and time and how close to the subway, whatever. So, I'm a 10-minute walk farther from the subway than maybe somebody that lives where I used to live in downtown Brooklyn or someone who needs to have the subway right on their corner. But what you get in exchange for a slightly less convenient way of living is, oh my God, I live on this beach, this private beach. And and because it's farther out, it is much less expensive, like by a third. I mean, it is a third as expensive to live out here. Nobody in New York wants to live farther out, but farther out is relative. From what? From me, for me, rather. This is the center of everything. So I'm not farther out from anything. But anywho, so a few years back, I was sitting outside, beholding the sunset over this private, gorgeous beach. And I think, Lord, it cannot just be for us. How do I share this? And so, my way of answering questions like that is I pray on it. Not pray, that's the wrong word. I reflect on it. I meditate on it. I go in and then I try to connect outward. So I was sort of asking, how can I share this? And the idea sort of arrived, restorative housing. And it's a lot to think I'm going to amass waterfront properties for felons around New York City. However, what I can do, I figured, is if I can find undervalued properties, I will be able to hire people to help me renovate. And that's something that's been my avocation my whole life. I come from a family of builders. I love houses and I love old houses and I love the opportunity that a house represents for families, for employment, for preservation. Anywho, so with all of that, I wondered, okay, who needs the blessing of the water the most. And people who lived in cages is the answer that came to me pretty quickly. So I instantly started looking up formerly incarcerated organizations and found a couple. And so simultaneously, I then, after looking at many, many, many weird watery communities in New York City, I found a place called City Island, which is a little teeny island off the Bronx, less than a mile long. It has, unlike the neighborhood where I live now in Coney Island, it has withstood centuries of storms and floods and fires, as opposed to where I live in Coney Island, which is sort of burned down and flooded out several times over. So there's this vintage island in the middle of the Bronx, and there are some real old houses on them, and they're on the water. And so I was lucky enough to find a little campus of 3 bungalows. And so we had a little family farm upstate, and I sold that in order to buy City Island. And I wanted to test my theory if, my whole little equation would work. The equation being finding an undervalued property, hiring formerly incarcerated people to renovate it, and then to rent them out to Section 8 housing. Because in New York City, living anywhere on the water is a premium. And certainly if you have a Section 8 voucher or any other kind of housing voucher, chances are you're not living on the water. But through this little formula, I can offer that. So I tried it out, self-funded the first time, and I learned so much, mostly from the guys. I had one woman on the crew, but mostly the guys. And I found trainers who were formerly incarcerated guys to impart knowledge onto our little work cohort. And together we were able to renovate 3 houses and make room for 3 single moms and their kids. And it worked, and the formula worked. So then I thought, well, this was before the idea of a nonprofit came into being. And I thought, well, let me get some investors. I need investors. I self-funded the first 2 projects, and then I was out of cash. And so I was looking for investors, and a friend pointed out that perhaps a nonprofit would be a better way to go, because then people could get a tax break. And I didn't need to personally own the properties. That was not a goal. I mean, I love owning properties, but this could be a separate thing. It didn't have to
Yeah.
add to our family portfolio or anything. And so
Yeah.
I applied for the nonprofit status, and it happened like much quicker than I thought. Well, then that landed me in, oh my God, now I got to raise money. I have to figure out how to do this. And that sent me to my bed for 2 days straight crying, because I'm really not a fundraiser and I don't love it. And I thought, how am I going to do this? And the New York Times did a story on us. And so now I'm like, oh my God, it's really game on. I have to learn how to do this. We were fortunate enough to get a lovely donor who kicked me off into being able to do my first 2 projects as a nonprofit. That brings us to now. And so now I have to hire a fundraiser or figure out some way to keep funding this thing, because I really believe in it. If you visit our website, there's a video, and both the Section 8 housing recipients and the guys who learn through our training programs both say how impactful they think the living and working on the water is. And that's really my goal. Yes, I want to create jobs for people. Yes, I love the idea of offering housing. But the water element is the blood that runs through it. It's such a special relationship when you live with the water that way. And for people who've lived a life of trauma, and I think anyone who comes out of the justice system has endured trauma. The trauma that led to them committing the crime, the trauma of committing the crime, and then the trauma of being incarcerated. So I'm not a psychologist, I'm no trauma expert, but I do know that having gotten over my own dark night of the soul here on the beach, I really want to be able to share that, because my unscientific calculation is that anything you need to get over, if you can do it by the beach, it happens 33% faster.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
sorry, I
love
just
that. I
talked your
love
ear off
that.
on that one.
No, that was so valuable. Thank you for sharing your very important story. And I think there's definitely some things to explore there. So first of all, What was the nonprofit application process like? What did you need to provide? You said it was simple and fast. I mean, what do you think contributed to that simplicity and quickness?
Well, full transparency, the simplicity was because I had somebody helping me out, a friend of my mom's.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was great.
Amazing.
What we had to do was provide a narrative. We had to fill out some basic, the basic questions. It doesn't, you don't have to be an incredible writer. And honestly, with AI, as long as you give it the points, it will help you. You don't need to be the one who writes every sentence, So, but it's the filing, making sure you sort of go through the checklist. Did I provide this? Did I provide that? In fact, what I had a situation where I realized after everything came through and I got my designation, I forgot to tell the Attorney General of New York State, like you just have to register. And I just didn't. So then I did, and fine, but it's important to look it up, all the information to anything you want to do these days, right? Pretty much the information is out there. So look it up, make sure you follow what the right checklist tell you to do, check off the stuff, and that's that. How did it happen so quickly? I truly have when I mean quickly, like within 6 weeks. And I feel like that happened. I mean, the New York Times article did come out and maybe they saw it and they're like, oh yeah, she's real. I don't know actually, but I wasn't pushing back on it. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, as they say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it sounds like if someone's trying to start a new business, particularly a nonprofit, it might be wise to seek counsel of some sort, whether you go through an automated service online that can do that for you, or you go through an actual human being who knows what they're doing. That could be helpful, right? So you make sure you get all those tick boxes checked off.
And now, a quick message from our sponsor.
Looking for a smarter, more secure way to manage and protect construction or remodel funds? At BuildSafe Escrow, they offer simplified escrow and draw services tailored specifically for the construction industry, ensuring your funds are protected every step of the way. As a trusted neutral third party, they release funds only when agreed upon milestones are met, providing transparency, security, and peace of mind for everyone involved. Whether you're building from the ground up or renovating a single room, BuildSafe Escrow ensures every project moves forward with confidence and clarity. BuildSafe Escrow milestone payments, transparent processes, trusted results. Visit buildsafeescrow.com today and learn why milestone-based payments and escrow are the future of construction. Thank you for staying with us, and back to the show.
Yes, 1,000%. And I think one thing that I have actually come to appreciate in the aftermath is that having a very, very, very clear mission statement. Ours was training. We want to train people with skills. The numbers are like if somebody is unhoused or doesn't have employment in the first 3 years of coming out of prison, the recidivism rate is like 78%. It's a lot. And so I wanted to make sure I was helping that problem by both teaching a marketable skill and giving someone some housing. Now, I will say that the heartbreak of my program so far has been, even though I think we pay a great wage, and even though I try to keep the programs going as long as possible, the projects rather going as long as possible, we're so small that the impact isn't as great as I'd like it to be. Meaning I would love for, if I have a 6-week project, to be able to pay someone enough and give them solid enough housing that they don't have to go to the streets when they're done with work for the day. But in truth, the need for so many people coming out of prison is so great. The financial need, the family obligations, all these things that I'm not able to do enough. Now, the light side of this coin is, well, you're doing something, and that's better than nothing. And while that's true, I do see that I need to scale in order to have the impact I'd like to have. There's a group out of Seattle doing what I want to do very well. They're called WELD, WELD, which is an acronym for something I don't recall. But they grew out of a family business and then saw the need and were able to address it. And they've really been able to put a lot of money and effort behind it. And now they teach a lot of people. They house a lot of people. They do some great work. So that's been sort of a beacon for me and something I'd like to get to. But again, when I'm up at night wondering if I'm doing enough for this world, at least I'm doing this little bit to start with. It's like the sourdough ball starter, right? I've got my little sourdough pinch, and now I need to bake a loaf.
I can imagine there are a lot of stigmas against people who have been formerly incarcerated. That's it's unfortunate, right? If they're trying to go out and get a job, someone looks into their history, they see a criminal background, and it's almost like an instant no, right? So what do you think that's about, and how do you think we can better think of people who were formerly incarcerated as being fit for work?
Well, I will tell you this. I'll start with the last one first. Prison is really hard to survive in. And these folks who survive prison know how to do anything. I mean, they can figure out how to make anything happen. Necessity being the mother of invention. They've had so much necessity there in prison. It's so hard to get anything done. So I have enjoyed working with the formerly incarcerated contractors because they have been able to help me solve construction issues that would have taken me a really long time to puzzle out. And they're scrappy and they're grateful for the work. And so, in my experience, hiring formerly incarcerated people can be a real win. So I would share that with folks. If you're saying, how do we change people's opinions? There's one story that I do find their scrappiness and gratitude to make them really good employees. Look, in general, I think it's a matter of being a little less judgmental, right? I mean, we all judge books by their covers, and that's just innate. You know, in recovery, there's a sentence, something about like, you're not responsible for your thought, you are responsible for your action, though. And so, even if someone crosses your path and you instantly judge them on the tattoos on their face or whatever, okay, but now let's take it a step further. Maybe they're also a great person. And maybe it has nothing to do with what's on their face. And maybe there's a really good reason they got involved in what they got involved with. Or maybe they were young and stupid, or who knows what. But I think we all will benefit from remembering the shoe could always be on the other foot. Always. Anything could happen. Those of us who feel so confident in our savings accounts or our missions in life, our station, change overnight. Look at the people. You said you're from California. The fires. I mean,
Mhm.
one minute you're living in your fat Pacific Palisades pad, and the next minute
Mhm.
you are homeless.
Yep.
That's real. Oh, my insurance was lapsed that week, and now I don't have insurance. Oh, I
Yep.
didn't have anything else, but this house was my retirement. You know, so anything could happen wherever you see yourself in the socioeconomic scale.
Oof, preach, sister, preach. Seriously, because I see how people react to homelessness as an example. And it's so quick to judge and just be like, oh, why did they do that to themselves? Oh, they deserve it, whatever, whatever. But in reality, it could have been as simple as, hey, house fire wiped out the situation. That's just one
House
example.
fire, lost a job, lost a child, and then went crazy. I mean, who
Hmm.
knows, you know? So I also always feel like I need to add, I have not been the victim of violent crime. I've not been the victim of financial crime. I've not been a victim. So I do have this like openness in my heart toward people who've committed crimes, caused great harm. I'm not saying it's should be as easy for everybody as I have found it so far. My experience has allowed me to feel the way I feel. So I certainly wouldn't knock anybody else if it's not as easy to come to.
Sure, sure. That's important to acknowledge. Absolutely. And there's also a stigma against Section 8 tenants. So that sounds very specific. You want to cater to that grouping of tenant. Why is that, and how is that helping?
Okay. So just because you're on Section 8 does not make you a bad person.
Yep.
In fact, it makes you smart because if the money is there, if the government benefit is there and you can use it, figure out how to use it, you know, and it's actually pretty hard work to all the paperwork and the appointments, the things you have to do to get your Section 8 status. So people may have some bias against a Section 8 tenant. I think any tenant can be a good tenant or a bad tenant. I've been a for-profit landlord. I'm still a for-profit landlord, by the way. But I mean, I worked with not Section 8 tenants for years. And if they decide to not pay you, they're just not going to pay you. If they choose to give you hell about every little thing in your apartment, they're going to do that. The beauty of Section 8 for a landlord, and I always have to point out, I am not an altruistic landlord. This is how we make money. The government always pays. The government always pays. If you have to evict a tenant, the government's still paying you for the eviction. And because we've invested so much of our money in our own profit, I need to make every dollar from our real estate business that I can. And I don't have even a month actually of buffer if somebody chose not to pay. So there is some protection for me as a landlord in doing Section 8. You're not just issued people. You pick your tenants. It's the same process really as just having another tenant. And then I love the added benefit of knowing that people who definitely would not be living on the waterfront in New York City otherwise now are. So that for me is just the fun part. But the business part is the government is my tenant in that they're the one that pays me. And that is rock solid. And I try to pick tenants that I trust as I did before when tenants were paying their bills themselves.
Brilliant. That makes sense. You still have your tenant, but you have the government as your guarantor. They are the ones footing the bill. Yeah. Brilliant.
Right.
Brilliant. So thinking about your hiring process within your nonprofit, how are you choosing the people both on your admin team and your contractors, your boots on the ground? What does that process look like?
Well, my admin team, the entirety is right here. I am my whole admin team.
Yeah.
So, but I have hired people along the way. I have somebody that helps me edit my videos. I have somebody that does the website. So
Smart.
Well, those folks don't need to share the spirit of what I'm trying to do. It's always nice. I've never been able to pay top dollar for anything. So I try to work with people who are substantive and good at what they do, but charge a fair price. But I also, by the way, like to pay people. With all the different AI programs you can use for graphics, for writing, for information seeking, people are like, see, you don't even need to hire anyone. I like to pay people for work. So I try to pay people who I can. I think I have a lot of mixed feelings on AI. And so in the meantime, until I figured it out, I really like to pay folks for good work. So I find people that I like to pay, people, I feel like deserve it. And then for my guys, and it is, I say guys because I've offered a lot of these construction jobs to women. And so far, I've only had one across all the projects. I hire people who show up. The way it works is I go through like an agency, right? An agency that deals with formerly incarcerated people. So like if I was going through any employment agency, I tell them what the job is. They tell me who the candidates are. I agree to see everybody, but out of that everybody, usually only 50% shows up. My jobs are really weird. They're a little farther out of town, require a willingness to be outside and to uh, learn, right? Because we're really about a learning program. So not everybody wants to do that. Some people are like, I know my trade. I don't need you. Okay, then you're not a good hire for me. My hire is both a student and a worker. So it hasn't been hard to find people because they make themselves evident pretty quickly.
Yeah, you're ultimately looking for somebody with a learner's mindset, not a know-it-all. This is my lane. That's your lane. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Kat, I'm so excited for the future of RHO. I sincerely love and appreciate what you're doing, both for your community, but the community at large, because this does ripple effect, right? I firmly believe that how we treat ourselves and how we treat other people definitely affects someone on the opposite side of the planet. it's all vibrational. This is a little woo-woo and I'm getting it out there, but that's just what I believe. And that's been my experience so far. So thank you.
You want to hear something
for
funny
what
on
you're
that?
doing.
By the way, I had a friend
Yes.
over this weekend and her last name is Wu, and she brought her husband, and I hadn't realized she's WU and he's WOO. So when she got married, she became Woo Woo.
I love that.
Isn't that
Yes,
amazing?
woo-woo. It's amazing. I'm glad she took that opportunity. That was a good one.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really good talking with you.
Of course, same Kat. Where can people find you, whether they want to help with funding or they want to help with the work or they just have a question? Where can they find you?
Our website is restorativehousing.org, and that's just like it sounds. I'm Kat, C-A-T, at restorative.housing.org. And then in my sobriety work, the show is called Soberness. So that's at soberness.com. And I'm also Kat at Soberness. So depending on what your question is, pick an email, any email.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll talk again.
Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Say bye-bye. See you later.
Bye-bye, see you later.
Thank you for joining us on Bringing Up Business. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world if you took a quick second to rate our show on Apple or Spotify, or write a comment on YouTube. You can also share this episode with anyone who you think might gain value from this show. You can find us on Instagram at bub.podcast. That's bub.podcast. And finally, if you have a question that you would like us to answer, please let us know at bringingupbusiness.com. We can either answer it on the show or we can respond back to you directly. Also, a quick disclaimer because our legal team asked us to. This recording is for informational purposes only and should not be considered business, financial, or legal advice. Opinions expressed are as of the date of recording and are subject to change. The views and opinions of guests on this program are not necessarily those of Umari Digital. Thank you again for listening.